You're listening to the Confidence Coach Podcast, episode 63. What is mindfulness and how do we implement it into our daily lives? An interview with Jordan Wavra. Thank you for listening to the Confidence Coach Podcast. I have an exclusive offer for my listeners today. So listen up. I have 2 spots left to my April retreat. I repeat, 2 spots left for my April retreat, but this is by application only. It is April 12th through the 14th. And if this calls to you in any way, I invite you to fill out the application at sashadavis.com/apply now. Let's get on the phone and see if you'd be a good fit for this retreat. All right, guys, welcome back. Today I have Jordan Wavra with me, another interview for today. Jordan is a holistic health and lifestyle coach. She's also a mom and a wife, so she is, quote, busy, lives a very full life, and I am super excited to dive into this conversation. We're going to talk about mindfulness and confidence and how to get out of your own way, so I'm going to let her take it from here. Can you kind of tell us who you are and what do you do?
Hey, yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Jordan Wavra. I am a holistic health and lifestyle coach. So basically what that means is I help women transform their bodies from the inside out through holistic approaches on health and lifestyle. And holistic, for those who may not be familiar with the term or who may have heard it but don't really know what it means, it just means taking into account everything from a mind, body, and soul perspective. So when we're talking about health, we're not just talking about like physical health, but really how things can, how our emotions and our thoughts and all of those like external environment things can also affect our health. So it's all integrated. And
I love that.
Yeah. And so that's kind of our focus.
Okay. So tell me how you got started on your journey. So how did you become a holistic health and lifestyle coach?
Okay. So my journey probably goes, probably back about 4 years now. But really, I was struggling with, I had chronic stomach problems, like stomach pains and bloating and really bad fatigue towards the end. And I would just get in like these really poor mindset, like negative mindset spirals, and like really random things would trigger me. Like one thing might make me super angry one day, and then the next day the same thing doesn't even bother me. And so like I was just getting like really tired, and I was sick of like feeling like crap all the time. And I had no idea what holistic health was. My growing up, there was like no such thing as like holistic health or anything like that. Like I seriously believed like anytime that you were sick, you had to go to the doctor and take medicine and all these things. But none of that was working for me. Every time I went in and was like, hey, this is what's going on. I don't feel good. Something's not working right. They basically told me that they didn't know how they could help me. They're like, we don't know what's wrong. We don't see anything wrong. And it got really frustrating. And so I got introduced to a holistic modality. And I don't really, need to get into that here because then I could get off on a tangent. But really what it was a form of alternative medicine called applied kinesiology. And it works with muscle testing. And through that, I was introduced to holistic nutrition because he was very, very passionate about holistic nutrition. And I saw such a shift in my body through just, switching up my nutrition to using high quality supplements that my body actually needed. That's kind of what the muscle testing does, is they don't just put you on vitamins that they think you need. They test your body to see if your body wants it. And that's how it was so powerful. And I just saw such amazing transformation. Like my stomach pain went away over time. The fatigue was the biggest thing. I was no longer tired. I had more energy. and my mood was better. And so just seeing that impact on my life really, really kept me engaged in that topic. And so I just kept learning more and reading more and studying more. And then after I got pregnant and decided to stay home, I decided to turn that passion into a career and help other women with it. Because I found that anytime, somebody asked me about it or asked my opinion, I just had so much to share, and I just got so excited talking about it. I just couldn't stop talking about it. And, it took a couple people to be like, Jordan, why don't you, have you ever thought about doing this for a living? Or have you ever thought about, helping people with this? And I was like, no, this is I'm not a doctor. That's kind of the stories I would tell myself, no, you have to be a doctor, these kinds of things to help people with their nutrition and their health. But really, I just kind of decided to take the leap and go for it. And so I've been doing that ever since, about last year this time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I want to bring it back to where you were talking about, you're having these stomach pains, you were bloated, you were fatigued, you felt like shit, and no doctor was able to help you. So how did that feel mentally and physically, being in pain and knowing something's wrong, but having everybody kind of say nope, everything's fine? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. I kind of have to take myself back to that place, but I just remember being really frustrated. And not only that, but there were a couple of times where I felt like maybe it was all in my head, where I was like, well, gosh, I don't know, maybe there is nothing wrong. Maybe this is just how people feel, and I'm just making stuff up or making things sound worse than they are. But I think I knew on a deeper level, there had to be a better way. And there had to be something that could help me with this, because really when you sit back and you think about it, it doesn't make sense for our bodies to feel bad. When you think about, life and all those things, your bodies are made to feel good. You should feel good all the time. And so just by sitting back and really being mindful about what my body was telling me, it kind of gave me that push I needed to keep looking for something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So walk us through what being mindful of your body is. I hear a lot of people say that, and I know what it means now, but I take myself back to 5 years or so, and people would say, well, you need to be mindful and blah. I'm like, what? Okay, so can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was kind of the same thing. I didn't really understand that word either, but really mindfulness in its simplest terms just means being in the present moment. And I feel like when people hear that, they're like, well, I'm in the present all the time. But in reality, our thoughts kind of take flight. And what happens is we spend the majority of our time either worrying about something embarrassing we did 5 years ago, or
yes,
conversation with somebody, and we're thinking about what we're going to say back to them, or we're worried about what our schedule looks like this week, or getting the laundry done, or whatever it might be. And so in reality, very few people actually spend any time in the present moment. We're fretting about the past and worrying about the future. And mindfulness tying into health, tying into my body, just means knowing what your body is telling you. So a lot of times when our body is in pain, we have a headache or our back hurts or whatever it might be, we don't sit back and really think about what could be causing it. We just assume oh, something's wrong, I got to go to the doctor, or oh, this hurts, I know there's a pill that I can take to fix that. And when I was learning how to be more mindful, I would sit there and I would think, okay, my stomach hurts. Okay, what did I do today? What did I eat today that could have affected this? I would just start running through different parts of my day and just thinking about things that could be affecting that. And what I would do is I I would start being able to make connections. Mindfulness allowed me to start making connections to what I was doing and what I was eating to how I was feeling. And through that process, I was able to figure out that even things as like healthy as oats, like steel cut oatmeal, would make me feel awful later in the day. And so really practicing mindfulness in that sense just kind of allows you to be more aware of your body and what it needs and what it doesn't want, and how you can, help get it back on track.
So I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
And a lot of times people think that, I shouldn't say people, I thought that when, like you said, when something's in pain, it's like, oh, I need to take a pill, or, oh, I need this. And so I did start diving into the food thing. And so then it was almost like I blamed food for everything, right? Like, oh, I feel like shit because I ate this or I ate that. But there's a few times where you talked about like what you did throughout the day. So would you say that like stress and interactions, work, things like that, would that have an effect on your mindfulness and awareness of how your body is feeling?
Absolutely. And this is something that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough, but stress not only has an impact on like our attitude. Like a lot of times when we're stressed out, we are crabby towards other people, or we're really short with people. And that's kind of something that a lot of us see. But stress also causes things like insomnia. It can cause anxiety. It can lead to like brain fog. It can, affect your blood pressure, your immune system, all these things. And so being mindful about what it is in your environment that's stressing you out, or even being mindful of when your body is starting to become stressed. Because a lot of times like I said, we're not present and we don't realize that we're getting stressed out until like something happens and we just like blow up.
Until there's a symptom.
Right. Or something happens and you're like, oh, I just must be really stressed out. But when you slow down and just kind of take a moment to be present and like listen to how your body is feeling, you can start noticing when something is off. You can start feeling that stress trickle in. And when you're more mindful about what it is that's causing your stress, you can either eliminate those things, or you can come up with strategies to help make those situations less stressful. Because yes, taking it back to health, stress really does have an impact on your health, along with things in your external environment. So, things that are in your, let's see, what example I want to use. Let's use like household products, for example.
Okay.
Something that everybody can relate to, because we all have a product somewhere in our house that we use that says do not ingest, or warning, call 911 if ingested, meaning that it's toxic, right?
Correct.
And a lot of times we only think about those things as being toxic if we ingest them, or if like it gets sprayed in our eyes or something. But in reality, those chemicals, those things all have fumes and aromas that get let into the air when we spray them or when we use them. And a lot of times, like, I don't know if anybody's like how I used to be. I wouldn't even wear gloves. Like I would just spray something and wipe it down and wash my hands and think I would be fine. But really, all of those things affect your health as well, because we breathe in the toxins that are in those chemicals. Or when we get things on our skin's our largest organ. It absorbs everything that you put onto it. And it's actually really interesting. I can't remember his name, but there's a doctor, he has a quote that's something like, it's worse to get something on your skin because you don't have like the acid and stuff in your digestive system to break it down. And that's not exactly how he worded it, but that's the gist of it. And it's kind of interesting when you think of things from that perspective. But the reason I bring up those external environment things is because those have an impact on our health as well. And not only with how you not only like physical health symptoms, but like your emotional state and your mood and things like that. There's, there's so many women that I've talked to who suffered from things like adrenal fatigue, which is something that I hear a lot of in my field. And
so what is adrenal fatigue?
So I'm going to be real honest. I don't know a whole lot about adrenal fatigue, but basically it's when we have hormonal disruptions, and it causes all kinds of symptoms, from mostly just being super, super exhausted. And then things just aren't working properly. I am not an expert on it, but I do know that it can cause symptoms like fatigue and hormonal imbalances and things like that. And a huge, not a huge cause of it, but a big cause of it is things that we put on our body, toxic chemicals and like things from like lotions and perfumes and things that we're not necessarily mindful of when we're putting them on our body. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. So what would be your recommendation for the first, for me, some of this is new information, some of this isn't, but you're definitely going a lot more in depth, so I love it. But so what would be like the first step for somebody? Because this can, again, taking myself back in my shoes, like this sounds like could be very overwhelming for people at first. So what do you suggest people start with and on becoming more mindful of their overall health and wellness and some of the toxins that are in their daily life?
I really like that you brought that up, because I feel like a lot of women think it has to be all or nothing. They have all into something and they get super overwhelmed. And I've experienced this. I don't know if you have.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely an all or nothing person.
Exactly.
It's
like
practice.
When I first started this, like I for real went to my pantry and threw everything out, went to the store and like loaded up on all these vegetables and all this produce I'd never heard of before, and half of it went bad. Like I overwhelmed myself so much. And I don't recommend going that route, because you will get overwhelmed, and that's not what we want, because overwhelm is kind of what deters us from making healthier changes. So taking it back to mindfulness, I recommend starting with just being aware of how your body feels when you eat something, or when you have a particular meal, or maybe even like if you clean your house, like there's a certain day of the week. So say like Sunday is cleaning day. Every Sunday you clean the bathrooms or something. Be mindful of how you feel afterwards. Like sometimes you'll get a headache like after you clean. I know this was like something that I never really made a connection with, but every time I would clean, I would have a headache for hours afterwards. So I would start by just being mindful of one aspect of your life, whether you want to start with food or you want to start with your environment, and listen to what your body is telling you, and ask yourself what small step you can take to help your body feel better, or to start feeling better. For example, I told you that one of my symptoms was headaches after I would clean. I didn't have a set day, but whenever I would clean, I would get a headache. And so if I were to sit and be mindful and be like, oh, well, I've noticed that every time I use this cleaner in the bathroom, that's when I get the headache. So something as simple as not using that anymore and swapping it for something else. There's a ton of brands out there now that are like have non-toxic cleaning labels, like Seventh Generation and Honest Company, and those are the two at the top of my head, but there's a lot out there. And just making a small switch like that. Or if it's food related, you've noticed that you're bloated every time you eat, lunch. Every time you get back from your lunch break, you're super bloated. Maybe you're a little bit sluggish and tired. I know I felt that all the time. Sitting down and being mindful about what it is that you're eating, or maybe it's what you're drinking, that could be causing it. Write it down in a notebook, write it down on a sticky pad or whatever, and start making those connections. You might start noticing that every time you have a Diet Coke at lunch, you are groggy and tired throughout the rest of your afternoon. And so you could just make a small swap with that. I know that every time I tell someone to make a swap with Coke or whatever pop they drink, they like look at me like I'm crazy. But does that make sense? I would just starting with something small and swapping it out, and then going from there. After they're comfortable with that step, then taking it one step further.
No, I love that. And it's funny you say Diet Coke. I was actually a Diet Mountain Dew fan, and it got to the point, because when you start, your body is conditioned to depend on, for me, it was caffeine, nicotine, and sugar, right? Like I could not get through my day without those, because every time I would have a headache or I would get tired or I would feel that brain fog, I thought I needed more caffeine, more nicotine. And it starts to create this vicious cycle versus cutting that out of my life. And so what I did, and I liked how you kind of talked about like, put it on a sticky note, write about it. And that's what I did. I almost took like an audit of my day of like the things that I was consuming and ingesting, or the people I was around and things like that. And I was like, okay, I'm around this person. Now I feel like shit. Oh, I had this pop. I felt good for 5 minutes and then I crashed, and taking into account like what you are encountering, energetically encountering, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is, and then figuring out how you felt before you consumed it and after you consumed it, and seeing if it's good, bad, ugly, whatever, and then making adjustments from there. And so I love how you used, the chemicals and things like that. Cause that too, I'm a bleach fan. Like I was always like, let's bleach everything. And I would, and I didn't use gloves. And then afterwards I felt like I was going to die. I'm like, why am I having a headache? Why can't I see straight? Well, because you totally cleaned your entire house with bleach and did not use any protection at all,
Right. It's so funny when you think about it now. It's like, well, duh.
It is. But at first you don't think about it because it's so mainstream. It's so common. And you're just like, and you don't know what you don't know. And until somebody brings that awareness, that mindfulness, that education to you, you have no idea. Like I didn't even know pop was bad for you until I started to read into it. And it's like, oh my God, like a can of Coke can clean your toilet and clean rust and all. Like I wonder what it's doing to the insides of your body,
I remember when someone told me that like Pop-Tarts were bad for me. And I was like, what?
Damn it.
I was like,
not
really?
The Pop-Tarts.
I mean, like, come on. Like, and this was like probably like in like, I think it was like back in high school, someone made that comment to me. And I was like, no way. Like, obviously they're not like healthy, but they're not that bad. And like, it's just kind of funny because you're right. You just don't know. Like, somebody tells you or educates you on the topic. How would you know any better?
You don't. And it can be overwhelming to change everything at once. So I like how you say, just like pick with one area of your life and then keep, once you master that skill, move on to the next. It's that focus. It's that boulder versus pebbles, right? So when you throw a boulder into a lake, it makes a big giant ripple effect. And then you can move on to something else, versus trying to do all the things all at once. You throw 50 pebbles into a lake and it's not going to make that much of an effect. Plus you're going to feel drained energetically, right? So one thing at a time, master that skill and use that energy and focus and move on to the next. So I love where this conversation is going. So obviously I'd say you're very passionate about, mindfulness and holistic health and lifestyle changes. So, so what would be the next step for somebody? Like what else could they do to implement more mindfulness in their day other than food?
I really liked when you just mentioned a minute ago about taking note of who you're spending your time with. And I think it's really important to address that because we don't realize that every single one of us emits an energy. And when we're around somebody who has a negative mindset or just like a negative persona about them, they will literally leech our energy from us. They will suck all that positivity out of you and you will leave the room feeling incredibly drained. And a lot of people aren't aware of that connection. And so I just wanted to point that out again because I really liked that you took note of the people you were spending your time with, because that is another form of mindfulness and being mindful of your environment, because who you surround yourself with does matter. And there's a reason why there's the saying, you become the 5 people you spend the most time with, because we all emit an energy, and that energy frequency is going to start changing yours, right? That other person's energy will affect yours. And so I think that's really important. But as far as mindfulness goes, there's a few other ways you can, actually there's a ton of ways you can practice mindfulness. But a couple things that I focus on with some of my clients is mindfulness in the present moment. And so really what that means is practicing being mindful with where you are now. And you could do that through practicing meditation, which I know many people cringe at that word, but it's not as bad as it sounds. Yoga is a great way to, or even just exercise in general. Because if you think about it, when you are exercising and you're lifting weights, you're usually counting reps, right? Or you're waiting for, if you're doing a timer, you're watching the timer and waiting for it to go down. When you are thinking about what you're doing, when you're exercising, you are being present. You're practicing mindfulness. So I talk about a lot of things like that we're already doing throughout our day and just how to turn them into mindful moments. I talk a lot about being mindful with our thoughts and our emotions. And that could be as simple as taking time each day to sit down and journal and just write down like how we're feeling. So, or maybe we write down what we did that day or what we want to do. And just, I don't know, just bring your awareness to the now. And then I also talk a lot about being mindful with others. And this is really easy to implement into your day because it could be as simple as when your spouse comes home from work, look them in the eye, ask them how their day was without going back to what you were doing. So a lot of times, maybe husband walks into the kitchen and you're cooking dinner or washing the dishes or loading or doing whatever, and you ask how his day is, but you're still doing what you're working on. And so you're not really being mindful of that person. You're not actually being present with them. So it could be something as simple as putting that stuff to the side, looking at them, and actually like showing them that you care that they're there and that you want to hear what they have to say. And this doesn't have to be with a spouse. It could be with your kids. So, I feel like a lot of times we see like those memes and stuff on social media now where like the kids are like throwing things or they're pulling on the shirts or they're doing all the things, and the mom is just trying to focus on something else, right? And being mindful or present could be something as simple as taking the 2 minutes to acknowledge what they're trying to tell you. And so really mindfulness strategies, they don't have to be like these really, what's that word I'm looking for? Structured practices. They can just be something really small that you implement into your daily life and your daily routine.
I love that. And it's funny that you talk about just taking a minute, because to me, the words that pop into my head are multitasking versus monotasking, right? And so when you're doing something and not being mindful of that person, it's half-assed, and they can feel that, like there's an energy behind it. And a lot of times that they won't even give you a true meaningful answer because they're like, why? You're not really paying attention anyways. And this goes back to your kids, your spouse, and everybody that you encounter. When you become more mindful and in the moment, being present, right? They feel that. And a lot of times they'll give that same energy back. So it's like what you put out there, you get back.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as I'm sitting here talking, I'm like, wow, we make this sound so easy, Oh yeah, just be mindful, be aware, da 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 da. And while it can be easy with help, but I want to ask you if you had any struggles along the way with just mindfulness or your holistic health journey.
Oh, absolutely. I still struggle. This it's not like something that you learn and practice and then all of a sudden everything is perfect. You're mindful all the time and you eat perfect and your body always feels good. You know, that's not how it works. There's always going to be that contrast, and that contrast is important because it's going to tell you, it's going to let you know when you're getting off track and when it's time to reel yourself back in. And I think, you know, some of my biggest struggles with the health part of it is really just doing it. You know, you get so used to eating a certain way and having the foods that taste good, and you know, you're going to hit a point where you're just over it and you're like, you don't even care that you have to give it up because you're just ready to feel good. And I did get to that point. But then after you start feeling good again, you know, you start missing some of those things you used to eat. And you're like, oh, I remember how good that used to taste and I just want some. And so you will, you know, indulge every now and then. And I think what I've learned to kind of help me with that struggle, because I mean, I would get to this point where like I would have this negative self-talk when I would want to indulge or when I would want to like go out to eat and like order a burger and fries and be like, no, like this is awful for you. And like you exercise and you want to look good and you're going to eat this. And then, you know, like you just have these conversations in your head. And I know a lot of women struggle with this. I know that I'm not alone here. And I think one of the things that's really helped me is knowing that it is okay to indulge and knowing that there's a difference between staples in your diet and indulgences, and that if your staples are things that make you feel good and that fuel your body and leave you feeling energized, and those are the things that you eat the most often, then that's great, and it's okay to go out and have fun and indulge in the delicious dessert and things like that every once in a while. And so I think that was a big struggle for me, is realizing that it is okay to do that. That just because I'm teaching holistic health to others and I'm teaching women how to live a healthier lifestyle and to heal their bodies with food, that I felt like I had to be perfect and that it wasn't okay for me to go out and order dessert when I went out to eat. I always had to be setting an example, and that was a huge struggle for me. And that's not realistic for anybody. It's good for your soul to go out and do things that bring you pleasure every once in a while, you know, as long as it's within means.
So do you have any comments on like drinking or smoking? Like that used to be, I mean, I don't do that anymore. I drink once in a while, not that I'm not right now, but I used to drink and smoke quite a bit. And then I noticed when I was more mindful and I kind of quit those things, I almost didn't want to do those. But do you have like a rule or suggestions for people who indulge in that way?
That's really interesting that you brought that up, because when I'm talking about indulgences, I'm speaking like strictly of food. And so anything that brings on an addictive behavior, I do not recommend indulging in. And the reason why, and I am not a health professional, so this is like strictly from like what I've experienced with people around me in my own experience, is that when you indulge in something that is addictive, it typically leads to a negative spiral. You have that like sweetness again. And like for me, I don't have any experience with, you know, the addiction to smoking, but I can relate to drinking too much. And, you know, for me, it's like one or two just leads to one or two more and so on. And so when it comes to things like drinking and smoking, the indulgence thing is a little different. If drinking isn't an addictive behavior for you, if you are good with just having one and that's fine for you, then I think that that's okay. Same thing with smoking. Well, really smoking and drinking, like in any amount, I'm never going to say that smoking and drinking are good for you, because there's no way around it. It's just not. It's really just deciding how you want to feel and how you want your body to function. And so again, when I was speaking of indulgences, I was speaking strictly from a food standpoint. So I do like that you brought that up, that's kind of my take on the smoking and drinking thing.
I like that. And I was just kind of curious because I've had people ask me, they're like, well, where do you draw the line? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Just like, do what makes you feel good. And if you're going to regret it, then don't do it, you know? And,
Right.
and so that's kind of where I drew the line, is because I too, you know, I have very extreme personality, a very addictive personality. So when it's like, oh, I'm just going to smoke one cigarette, it's like, you know, a half a pack or a pack later. Or if I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have 2 or 3 drinks, next thing you know, I'm like, somebody's driving me home because I, you know, blacked out the bar. So there wasn't there wasn't a healthy line for me. And while now I feel like I could have like a drink and be okay, it still makes me very nervous, because it's like, where do you draw that line when you do have that addictive personality, you know? And so I always go back to the, am I going to regret this later? And if the answer is yes, then I don't do it, you know? So while I'm living in the present right now, I'm always mindful of how I'm going to feel afterwards. And if it's going to make me worse than I feel now, then I'm not going to do it. Like a lot of times that immediate gratification does not supersede my, you know, my long-term goals or my long-term feeling good, you know? And so I think mindfulness and awareness in your mind and body in that aspect too is very important. Like, how is this going to make me feel, not just right now, but maybe tomorrow too, but just being aware of that, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, and there are people who can't even indulge with certain foods, right? Because sugar is a huge addiction as well. And so when when I'm talking about this, I don't want to mislead people into thinking it's okay to, oh, well, you know, I'm addicted to sugar and she said it's okay to indulge in, so I'm going to have like all these brownies, or, you know, I'm
talking a dozen donuts.
Right, a dozen donuts.
One donut, not 12.
I'm talking about like a health, you know, if it's something that you know you can put a healthy limit on, then that's okay. But if this is something, you know, and this is where that mindfulness comes into play. You need to be mindful about how you are going to react to that indulgence. And if it's going to send you down a negative spiral or put you in a place that you don't want to be, then it is something that you should avoid.
Yes, I love that. So it's really having, gosh, I want to say discipline, and just really being aware and in tune with your body.
Yep.
So I love that. Okay. So we talked a little bit about like overwhelm, you know, some of the struggles, things like that. So what do you think is the biggest thing from holding people back from doing this on their own, or being more mindful, being more present?
You know, a couple words that come to me when I think about what holds people back is uncertainty and fear. Like, I think the uncertainty about whether something's going to work, or about how you're going to react to something, how it's going to play out. You know, when we don't know what the outcome is going to be, we get hesitant, or we don't always want to take that step forward. And then, you know, the fear factor as well, you know, not knowing where to start, being scared to make the change because of family or because of friends, or, you know, people around them not being supportive. You know, I think that's a huge one. I hear people tell me all the time, like, I would love to like live that lifestyle, but I'm afraid of like what my family would say, or like my immediate family would never support that. And I think, you know, the fear of what other people would say, or the fear of not being supported, is a big one that holds people back as well.
I hear you. A lot of times, like the fear, you know, and I like how you put uncertainty and fear, because to me, the fear of the unknown is like a whole fear in itself, right? Like a lot of times we won't move forward because we don't know the outcome. But now looking back, I was always scared to move forward, because it's like, well, how is this going to look? How is this going to look? And if I can't control every little detail, then I'm not going to do it, right? Yeah. But I like to think to myself, you know, you crawl before you walk before you run, and you just pick yourself back up and you keep going. And if it doesn't work out, so what, right? At least you tried. So I love that. So what would you say to that person right now that's listening, what advice do you have for them? What suggestions do you have for them to get started on this journey?
I would say that if this is something that's calling to you and you're really ready to become more mindful and to take that journey to a more holistic health and lifestyle, then to sit down and really think about where it is you want to start and write down your why and just figure, why is it that you want to do this? And don't think about anybody else. Don't think about what your husband's going to say. Don't think about what your parents are going to say or your friends, and write it down. And there's something powerful about writing things. And there's something, really powerful about seeing on paper what it is that you want and what it is you want for your overall health. And when you write that down and you put it somewhere where you can see it, that's going to give you that courage to get over that fear to move forward. And then just go for it, to take that first step and to know that you don't have to go all in, that it might just be a baby step. It might be a step that's so small that nobody else even notices that you took it, but it's still a step forward. And so,
if you take one teeny tiny baby step every single day for 365 days, you're going to come a whole hell of a long way, right?
Absolutely.
I love this. Okay, so you seem very confident, and I know you talk about having the courage to just go for it. So can you tell us what confidence means to you?
I think to me, confidence means not being afraid to get outside your comfort zone. And I feel like a lot of us live in that comfort zone, that space where we feel really safe, but the magic happens outside of it, and it's really, really scary and really uncomfortable to step outside of it. And so when we're being confident, we are taking that step outside of our comfort zone. We're being a little more vulnerable, and in doing so, we're being more of ourselves.
I love that. You're stepping into who you are called to be, is what I like to say. You're taking that inspired action, and it gets easier. It's those mental push-ups, right? You practice a little bit today, before you know it, you're like looking back saying, oh, that's no big deal. I can't believe how far I've come, right?
Yep. And it does happen. I know a lot of, I don't know this, but I'm sure there may be some women listening to this who are thinking it's not that easy. It might not be, but I'm telling you, when you look back, a lot's going to be different. A lot's going to have changed, even if you don't feel it in the present moment.
Yep. And I like to say, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and everybody would be walking around confident mofos with no struggles or anything like that. And if it wasn't a struggle, like, how boring would life be without that contrast, right? And so I always try to invite that contrast, that conflict, that stuff in, because it reminds me that I'm human and that I'm alive, and that there's possibilities everywhere, and that this is my challenge right now. Where before I used to like run and hide from it. It was like, whoa, challenge. I can't, this is my comfort zone. Get out of my bubble. But now it's like, you only get one life, right? And where are you going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, hell, 100 years from now, if you don't start doing the things that you feel called to do?
Yep.
So awesome. This was an amazing conversation. I know we can just go back. It kind of took its own course, so I'm excited.
It did. Our conversations tend to do that. They kind of like veer off in a completely different.
I think we kind of kept on track with the mindfulness, but I really loved it. So for those that are listening and they're just like, yes, I need more Jordan in my life, can you kind of tell us what you got going on and how people can contact you?
Yeah, for sure. So right now, I actually have a mindfulness course that we're starting up next week. So this course is all things mindfulness, everything that we just talked about in this episode. And it's for women who are ready to become more present and connected to themselves and who they are, and to develop a better, more peace of mind, and to be able to manage those thoughts and emotions that run our day and that cause that stress, which in return, causes all the physical symptoms that we might have. and all the strategies that we can use to become more present, become more mindful of other people in our lives, and become more mindful of our thoughts and emotions. And so that's what I've got going on right now, and I'm super excited about it because, as you can tell, this is a topic that I'm super passionate about. And so,
and very knowledgeable about, I might add.
Thank you. And so yeah, that's what I've got going on. So really the best way to contact me, well, there's a few ways you can contact me, but through social media is a great way. You can just DM me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. And then I also email. Email is a great way to reach out to me. And, if you're feeling called to this and this is really resonating with you and you really you want to hear more, you want to know what this course is about and how it may be able to help you, then, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you.
This is awesome. Okay, so what is your Facebook and your Instagram handle? And then I'll put the rest of your contact information in the show notes for people.
Okay, so Facebook is Jordan Wavra, and then my Instagram handle is exactly the same. It's at Jordan Wavra.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan, so much. I always love our conversations, and I hope people found massive, massive value out of this. I know I did, and it's always a nice reminder of how we can be even more present and more mindful in our daily lives. Sometimes we just get wrapped up in the hustle and bustle, or like, oh, I don't need to work on that. And that is like the biggest indicator that, yes, this is exactly what you need. So I just want to say thank you for the reminder. I know I needed it, and I'm sure there's others that needed it too. So
thank you so much for having me. I loved our conversation.
I did too. And thank you to everybody else for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, send Jordan an email, go follow her on all social medias, share this with a friend, let us know what you think, leave a review, and we'll catch you guys next time.